Thank you so much, Jennifer, for the generous introduction. And I'd just like to say, because people look at this title and they try to understand that healing people heal the planet. And they're like, do you mean healing people are healing the planet? Do you mean we're healing people? And I'm like, no, we're healing people heal the planet, because in the same way that hurting people hurt people, hurting people hurt the planet. So it's really just a play on that phrase, and reframing, which is has a lot to do with what the message is about, with what the paradigm shift that we're promoting with this film and with this panel. A paradigm shift that isn't an old paradigm, that isn't a new paradigm. It's an old one. And in the last panel, we heard a lot about listening to people who listen to nature. So I really appreciated that backdrop. So my name is Nellie. I'm the CEO and founder of AHAM Education, and I would just like to introduce our panel. Actually, I think your microphones, you have shared microphones, that you can just introduce yourself. So maybe we can start to my left with Dallas and then Artie.
Hello, my name is Reverend Dallas Conyers. I'm here with the People's Justice Council, and I also have the honor of being the international liaison, one of them, for the United States Climate Action Network.
Hi, my name is Arti Aluwalia. I'm from India, and I serve as the country chair for India for Eco-Civilization that's present in 45 different countries. I also work as the Director of Publications for the UN's Commons Cluster NGO Major Group, and extremely happy to be here. Thank you so much, Nellie, for including me.
Meku, my name is Dr. Crystal Cavalier, co-founder of 7 Directions of Service. Also, thank you so much for allowing me to be here working on the rights of nature.
I too am grateful to be here today. My name is Reverend Susanna Tuttle, and I am here with us as a board member of the Southeast Climate and Energy Network. I work for the North Carolina Council of Churches and direct the North Carolina Interfaith Power and Light Initiative there. And I am also part of the U.S. Climate Fair Shares Collaborative. So many blessings, grateful.
And last but not least, could we bring up Shreya Javeri, who's joining us from Zoom, who is our youth representative, who could not be here because she's in school. And Shreya, can you hear us? If you could introduce yourself to the audience.
Thank you, Ms. Nellie. Hello, everyone. I hope you're doing well. My name is Shreya, and I'm the Global Youth Ambassador with AHAM Education. I'm very excited to be here with you all, or virtually. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Shreya. So we're actually going to go straight into the film. And I just want to, because at the end, we usually, everyone's always pressed for time at the end of a session like this. So I want to give my thank yous now to Exposure Labs, the Southeast Climate and Energy Network. Many of the individuals here you will see in the film. I'm so grateful for all who have played a part in making this possible. And all of the filming teams who, you'll see in the credits who they are. So I just really want to thank also the Faith Pavilion and all of the partners for giving us this opportunity to tell this story. And so I invite you to sit back, and those of you that are online, thank you for joining. I know we have many friends in the United States and in the Caribbean joining us. And so this is the first time that this film is being screened. This is officially our film launch, so thank you all for being here. So without further ado, I think we're gonna begin the film. Enjoy.
We're in the front lines. We know more than most people do about what's actually happening. and it's depressing. It's like you're watching this house, watching it on fire, and only a few people seem to know that it's happening, and everybody else is like, yeah, whatever.
We have to be aware that we are fighting a mountainous battle, and it takes a lot of commitment.
Sometimes I can get disconnected and just I feel scattered and I feel like all over the place. And if I can just remember and I breathe and I go outside and I go look at my garden, reconnecting to the earth.
Dear Mother Earth, I bow my head before you as I look deeply and recognize that you are present in me and that I am a part of you. You are present in every cell of my body. My physical body is your physical body, and just as the sun and stars are present in you, they are also present in me. You are not outside of me, and I am not outside of you. You are more than just my environment. You are nothing less than myself.
We live in a world that's ridden by disconnection, grief, anxiety, especially around the ecological crisis. AHAM Education as an organization is using mindfulness and contemplative healing practice as a tool to really help activists who are on the front lines manage their grief and their anxiety, and to tap into this connection with nature as a way to approach this work from a place of love rather than fear, from a place of hope rather than despair.
We are now going to transition to the mindful beach cleanup.
We host this mindful beach cleanup because we wanted to create an experience for folks who are already engaged in healing to discover for themselves that healing oneself is not separate from healing the planet. That actually, when we are deeply connected to the present moment, when we are in a contemplative space, we discover that there is no boundary between the human body and the earth body. By offering this opportunity not just to practice healing in nature, but to practice healing of nature, we're creating activists out of people who are practicing mindfulness or other forms of healing for themselves.
I'm a practitioner of this work, of mindfulness, of gathering here at the beach every Sunday with a community of practice for a better world in terms of climate, in terms of what we leave behind for our children, and to engage children and youth in creating a better world for themselves.
It's a multi-generational movement we're creating because we have student volunteers who are earning volunteer hours. They're practicing mindfulness and they're learning to take care of a planet from a place of connection and love instead of fear and guilt.
I just came here so I can experience it. I just wanted to get a little bit of service hours. I started my meditation practice 2.5 years ago, and around 1.5 years in, I started to get more in touch with myself, get more in touch with my mind and my body. We went into a circle and we went into the ocean. We were feeling the energy connecting through our hands. Hands are very powerful. And I started to realize that there's power in people.
I think practicing mindfulness in nature, it gives us a connection to what really is important to focus on for the planet. This Be Nature experience helped me to really have a broader sense of what I can do, the experience of walking on the beach and cleaning up the debris that was left was very purposeful as well as healing for me. And that's just one small thing to do to help the planet, but I think that it drew me in to what is needed globally if everyone does a small part in protecting our natural settings.
I promise to keep the awareness alive that you are always in me and I am always in you. Lost in the confusions and worries of daily life, I forget that my body is your body, and sometimes even forget that I have a body at all. Unaware of the presence of my body and the beautiful planet around me and within me, I'm unable to cherish and celebrate the precious gift of life you have given me. That is why I make the deep vow today, with gratitude and love in my heart, to cherish and protect your beauty and to embody your wondrous consciousness in my own life.
I have been researching and trying to develop meditators to become more activists, more active in the process of trying to tame the ecological catastrophe. I think that there is a new conscience brewing. I think that people are more aware of the ecological crisis that we are facing. You know, the planet is going to continue without us, but life in the planet is really threatened. I have been trying also to bring meditation to activists, so activists can avoid burnout and really do their activism from an inner knowing, from the center of themselves. That is, in a way, is nonviolent and more peaceful.
The urgency and the scale of the crisis, it's quite anxiety inducing. And when you're doing work in communities that are already experiencing these impacts, it just compounds that even more. So you're actually internalizing those stressors and all that anxiety, and it manifests in many, many ways.
I'm a blip on a long arc of injustice, and trying to hold it all and unpack it all, but win all at the same time. It just doesn't seem like there's enough time, but the stars are aligned and we don't have another choice. I'm a Black woman from the South, and seeing my community bear the brunt of a lot of the traumas and the challenges and the very intentional systemic oppressions that come along with being from the South. It's so difficult to live, it's difficult to breathe, it's difficult to make money. Rarely do folks feel like they have enough. And then when you add on to that, you know, the signs of our times, of this moment where so many things seem to be coming to a head, they seem to be unraveling.
I grew up in a Black community, and there are 3 different plants located within the communities. People now are more aware that those plants are causing different types of harm to them. Cancers, asthma, the list goes on.
I've seen it personally in my life, having family members who have lived a couple of miles away from a plant or right next door to a plant and have unfortunately succumbed to illnesses like cancers because they didn't know that things were polluting them.
Making my community more aware about those environmental changes, that's a big part of what I do.
Eco-grief is a new term that we're adding to our vocabulary that impacts those of us that are the advocates, the activists, the champions, that continue to go forth in spite of. And I think that it comes a reckoning time that we're carrying those burdens. So we've brought in counselors in our community. We've held grief sessions, grief and bereavement sessions that had nothing to do with death and dying.
The stones, the rocks are for fear. With this stone, we can let our fear speak. In speaking fear, we also show the trust and courage it takes to speak to it. These dried leaves represent our sorrow. There is great sadness within us for what we see happening to our world. This empty bowl stands for our sense of deprivation and need, our hunger for what's missing, our emptiness.
For everything that seems like a misfortune or a missed opportunity, I fill it with trust that all that I am and all that I can do is enough, and it is perfect.
I hear you.
We have to love all of us, the ugly parts, the tired parts, the people we are when we're angry, the people we are when we look in children's eyes and we feel like we're not doing enough. We have to love every part because this world is full of ugliness. And when we can love every part of ourselves, we can love every part that the world is showing us of itself and embrace it and heal it.
I think our spirits come into this space, into these bodies, and into this world that is so broken. We're in these human forms, in this one beautiful life that each of us have. We have to deeply awaken to that experience in the now, while we're alive, in these forms, and learn how to grieve and what the stages of grief are, and how to practice that in a healthy way and support one another through this journey. Eco grief is something that we are all collectively experiencing.
75% of the population is worried about climate change. People are waiting to be activated, and we're not doing a good enough job of doing that. I started regularly meditating about a year and a half ago, and I noticed an immediate positive impact in my life.
I have a habit of just jumping to a 10 as soon as something upsets me. But in our sessions, I've learned to place my feet on the floor and actually just take 3 deep breaths and be able to understand where we are in the moment and feel how I want to restate my issues, but also my feelings that I'm actually feeling inside, and then ask for my request after I've made my point clear.
Some of the stressors for me being a part of this movement is it's a job where you can become easily frustrated and overwhelmed because it's so much. It feels like I can't do it alone.
It's the apparent apathy of the common populace of America and having to fight people who don't want to think about this. It's hurtful to the heart. I have to remember to be kind and empathetic even when I'm exhausted. And one of the AHAM practices that I attended, we did a exercise in drawing. That thing about tore me up. I didn't know I was so disconnected, and yoga and meditation are a part of my life, but I wasn't bringing it into my workspace and therefore tapping into what I was feeling in my workspace.
I recognized in our team a need for more mindfulness, more self-care, more willingness to be open to ourselves and to each other. So that's what motivated me to start incorporating mindfulness into our organizational practices.
I was able to find a sense of calmness and peace in breath work. I've been able to contain that sense of stillness, even in the very difficult conversations that we've been having.
We have to be better communicators because of all the stress and the trauma and the urgency that we're all witnessing and or experiencing. Being mindful allows us to slow down, be more receptive to one another with all of the trauma and anxiety and stress of the climate work. We have to be more mindful. I don't think we have a choice.
Mindfulness and healing-centered practice, to me, is the work. And if we focus on the mindful practice, all the other stuff is going to fix itself. I really believe that.
Mindfulness, we need healing for us to get ourselves right, because it is our time to lead now.
In those moments, we have turned to you, dear Mother, and asked whether or not we could count on you. You didn't answer us right away. Then, beholding us with great compassion, you replied, "Yes, of course you can count on your mother. I will always be there for you." But then you said, "Dear children, you must ask yourselves, can your Mother Earth count on you?" Dear Mother, today we offer you our solemn reply. Yes, Mother, you can count on us.
So I'm going to invite folks to take a psychological side. You know what that is? So it's breathing in, lifting your shoulders up to your ears. Nice squeeze, and then exhale and drop your shoulders and sigh. Okay, now that was practice. Now we're going to do it again for real. This time, put down anything you have in your hands, because there was a lot in there. And then just take a deep breath, close your eyes, allow your shoulders to rise. Squeeze everything you've got. And then when you're ready, let it all out and just say, ah. All right, thank you. So I'd like to invite the panel to share their reactions. We'll talk a little bit about eco-affinity and what it means, because we have multiple perspectives present. And those of you that are here in the audience, there is nothing that we do that doesn't include practice. So we will all have the opportunity to experience a mini version of what a bee nature experience could be in a setting where we're indoors, of course. We'll have an opportunity to do that and to practice with each other. We all know that in this space, there's a lot of intellectual panel talk. So I hope it's a refreshing idea for you to be able to talk to each other and to actually practice what we're talking about in real time. So I'd like to start with Ms. Reverend Dallas Conyers, who will have to leave us a little bit early because she also has a film that's happening in a few moments. Yeah, just what's alive in you now as you look at that for the first time? Anything you want to say? Just what's on your heart right now, and especially from the activist perspective, because you're one of the longest activists that I've known in this work.
Well, the first thing is what a blessing it is to work with the people I work with. To see people who get up every day and every night and every middle of the night most of the time and acknowledge this work sucks. This work is hard. I don't want to do another meeting, but I'm going to show up for you, and I'm going to show up for my family, and I'm going to show up for my community, and they're going to bop us down on the head, but we're going to show up again. And that is what I remember when I watched that film, all of the different ways that we can change and touch this work, not just each other, but doing, like Nellie said, doing practice in real life, speaking scriptures and making it applicable not just to life and living, but to policy and really being the light of the earth. Doing the work on the ground with people who don't realize that they've been speaking this language for generations, and we don't give them words, we just translate alongside them, not just translating and giving them the words that we speak in spaces like this, but also bringing the very relevant words and knowledge that they've been speaking into these spaces. So I'll stop there. I don't know if you want me to go into eco-affinity yet.
I mean, you can if you'd like to.
So the earth teaches us about rhythm. The earth teaches us about pausing. The earth teaches us about the beauty in between breath. You know, there are certain types of breath work where you don't breathe in, you don't breathe out, you actually hold. And there's that little silence in between the trees when the wind blows, right before the next wind goes, right between the leaves rustling and the next movement of the squirrel. There's that piece of silence where you just feel all the connection between your feet on the ground and your energy into the universe. And that's the earth teaching us about breath and teaching us about how there's a time to breathe in and take in and absorb, but there's also a time to hold, and then there's a time to give back with intentionality, to let go, to redeposit, to give a bit of yourself back out. And we see that not just in the air, but we see that in the tides going in and coming out. We see that in even how food grows and comes up out of the ground, but then returns to the ground. So there's so many cycles that I think we need to not only pay attention to in how we live life and how we experience life, but also in how we write, because we're a cop, I'm going to keep coming back to this policy, right? How we write policy to be able to conduct our communities. If we don't put those pauses, those give backs into policy, what we wind up is what we're living in now. So as we discuss this practice, this equal affinity, let's talk about that, those other parts, not just the taking in, but the giving out and the pauses.
Yes, thank you. Beautifully said. And for those of you that don't know the term eco-affinity, we half made it up, half found it in cyberspace, and it fits. There's a model, and I have slides and whatnot, and I can bring it up, but the conversation is just so rich right now. Ecofinity simply means falling in love with nature, falling in love. And how do we do that? So I'd like to pass it on to Crystal Cavalier, because I think, well, first your reaction to the film, and then can you share what in your culture and community taps into that eco-affinity? How is that represented in your work and in your life?
So my reaction to the movie was amazing. And it kind of ties into the previous panel about the rights of nature. It just really brought me back to all of that. So you can say that the rights of nature can be traced back to many of our indigenous ancestors and our indigenous traditions that just revered the natural world. And it's about getting back to that, the interconnectedness with human life. And we've always have seen nature as a living entity with its own rights rather than a resource to be exploited and controlled. And you see for the last 532 years, you know, our indigenous people on Turtle Island, you know, we had to go through that eco-grief, right? Which led to a genocide or ecocide, to where our spirits were detached from the land. And it's taken us this long to start that healing, because a lot of our people have trauma that has been associated with the raping of the land. So that was my thoughts about that, and how wonderful it is to be part of this mindfulness, and how it kind of ties back into this. My husband helped me, and we usually do this. So the 4 gifts of life that were received at our creation and introduction to this physical world. In this physical life, the first gift is breath. It reminds us of the physical experience of our lives. And, you know, just try it right now, like 1 breath in, 1 breath out. The second is the good mind. It represents the mental experience of our lives. So just take 1 second right now and let's just have a thought. Close your eyes and quiet your mind. The third gift is our heartbeat. So the inner drum that we all carry inside us, it is our relationship to the emotional experience of our journey of life. And when you're ever in doubt, just place your hand over your heart. And if you feel its beat, your journey is continuing. And then finally, the fourth gift, the gift of voice, this spiritual gift, the ability to speak, sing, yell, or cry our prayers, challenges, victories, losses, whatever you have. It can introduce us to this spiritual experience and connect our many relationships. So look to those around you right now, and with your simple voice, declare to each other, I love you. So I love you. I love you. One more time, let's say it together. I love you. So Pilahuk, thank you, Nelly, and I love you.
So that's what eco-affinity, so we have a fancy thing up on the screen that's getting thrown off because it was a Google slide document, and you know how that goes. But you get the gist of it. I mean, we're putting something into a model that already exists as around the world in many cultures. But think of it as sort of a bridge, because maybe in our communities, it's a bridge too far for some folks. And so how can we connect those of us that live in disconnected worlds to find that connection again? And I'd like to pass it on to Susanna Tuttle. Speaking of reconnecting, and you're a faith leader, you're also an activist. And so just your reaction, of course, to the film, but then also how is this showing up in your work as an avenue for you to not only take care of yourself as an activist, but to engage the community in this work when there's a lot of apathy and distrust?
Yes, well, thank you. This film is just beautiful, Nellie. Congratulations. And to be a part of it, and as Dallas was saying, this was built by family. And to see all the names and all the people that made this possible, we've been working really hard for a long time together as one, particularly in the Southeast with the Southeast Climate and Energy Network. And those interviews were taken at our annual convening. We took a break out to go talk about mindfulness, and what it actually did for me in that convening, as this panel is doing for me in the middle of COP28, is helping me remember myself to the human family, to remind myself why we do this work, and to reconnect to the nature, point, and purpose of our existence, of which I do believe as a faith leader, and why I do this work from that place through the lens of faith, is that it is the climate emergency itself that actually can be an opportunity for us to reconnect and remember what we are capable of as spiritual beings having a human experience. And as we come together, and I think the point made about the language that we use in policy, we're all closely tracking what words are going to define our future and how we're going to live into that. It's so critical. And I hope this message, I hope that we can share this film with every person who is here, all 80,000 people, and that they will take it back to their communities and begin to practice, because that is what we are not doing. And I like to talk about the work that I do, and what I remind myself when I wake up is I call it the What I Love campaign. What is it that I love, and what am I willing to do to protect it? And so I wake up very hope-filled, because to lead with love is to lead with joy. So that practice that I start the day with reminds myself to lean in a little harder, a little deeper. I want to fall in love over and over and over again. And I'm just so grateful for the fellow activists that are taking the time to practice the mindfulness, to do the meditation, to listen to our ancestral elders and indigenous communities. We've got this. We can do this. And that's what we're here to do, to remind all of those ministerials and people making very big decisions right now about wording and goals. And that's why we're here. And so I'm really grateful.
Thank you, Susanna. So something that you said that is part of this paradigm of resiliency, which is the words that we use are so powerful. The way we frame the issues, if we keep talking about the symptoms, and we're not framing our work, our focus, based on where we want to be, then, quantum science, all, in positive psychology today tells us that that's what will echo in the environment. That is what we will attract. So if we keep talking about, well, I don't want to use specific examples today, but we'll just think about that and allow that to set in. Perhaps, the falling in love that you mentioned is what allows us to reconnect to that which we want to see and that which we want to invest in. And it actually shifts our orientation. And it shifts what shows up in the language, in the documents that are being drafted right now, but it also shifts the actions that are happening on the ground. because what we focus on expands. So speaking of the ways in which we can think about this work, I'd like to invite my dear friend Arti, who is a powerhouse and who has been instrumental in developing framework on unity within the United Nations. We're colleagues in the UN Commons Cluster, to speak a little bit about, well, first of all, your reaction to the film, and secondly, I think the unity framework, as you'll hear from Arti, fits really well into what we're proposing here. So if you could share more about that.
Okay, yeah. All right, thank you so much, Nelly, for this. I think what came up for me when I watched this film is that connection with nature requires a certain amount of tenderness within our person. And that is the loss that we are experiencing today in every capacity, in every space. The loss of tenderness within all of us is a part of nurturing. How are we nurtured? What are the influences around us? The highest order of leadership today is a product of some kind of nurturing. And that has a close connection with the loss of tenderness that we see in them. So coming to language, yes, language is something that would require you to be articulate if you have a certain amount of awareness of the self, of your circumstances, of your surroundings, of the connections with nature. And that whole disconnection is a part of the nurturing that we receive, the nurturing environment that we create. It is always said it takes a village, and I always ask the question back, where is the village? We're not, so in the context of unity, of course, I'm going to come to that, but talking about the grief aspect also. So grief, and I say this today, sitting here at a very, very important space in this entire world and this entire planet, that when we look at grief, it is not something that is done accidentally. It is not something that we experience accidentally. My question sometimes is that I, as an Indian, I'm a fourth generation product of conflict. And I know how intergenerational that conflict has been and how it's been passed on to me to orient me as a person on this planet. And as of today, the kind of conflicts that we see, the kind of lack of tenderness that we see, if the leadership of the world is not mindful of the generations it is ruining, then first of all, it shouldn't be the leadership. And if it is, then that is the purpose, perhaps, that we miss to capture and sort of, see it, because there are so many distractions all the time. That led, and these are things that one has to embody to be able to understand and tap into and connect with, or even reason. These are dangerous spaces, I'm told. But I always say there's always one way to be born, and there are many ways to die. How many are you going to fear and stay silent? So that being said, the unity framework that we developed, Nelly is a big part of that, with the United Nations Commons Cluster. It was an exercise in unity, I'd say. We were all going divergent, but then we realized, hey, what the hell are we doing? So we got together, we got back on track, and we aligned the entire framework with the 3 pillars of the SDGs, because we had to look at a common reference point for the world as it understands the UN language and the UN, let's say, goals. And those, of course, get passed on to national level, country goals. So from that point of view, we looked at 3 pillars of unity, that is nature, society, and economy. These are the functions within which all of us operate. So in the context of nature, there have been examples that we've cited as models for the member states to look at in terms of maximizing some of the initiatives and efforts. And I'd like to cite some of those. So in the context of nature, how is it that we miss out on evaluating root causes and go into spaces that are possibly just transactional, right? So that has to change. And I'm not going to cite any examples, because if I don't cite the other, then they're going to get very upset with me that you came on stage and you didn't cite my example. The second aspect was society. And here I'd like to talk about something very interesting, that in the context of society, how are we built? We are built by family systems. So the family becomes the unit or how the entire society is constructed, how it is created. And when you look at the family systems, there are literally no guidelines. There is no rule book. Of course, we wouldn't want one, but there are some very, very basic aspects of how families build societies. And it all boils down to the fact that families, by human design, by natural design, have been given the responsibility to nurture. And that disconnection, in most of the traditional societies, it is expected that students or children should, really elevate the name of the family. But there is absolutely no focus on who are they, how are they, what is the characteristic they're born with inherently. We completely sort of dismantle that for them, and then we've got this assembly line of all of us. That is something that we sort of elaborated upon based on some of the examples we got from the UN Commons clusters. The Common Cluster basically has people like everybody here. If you'd like to join, you come and you provide your insights, and we can include that into the papers. We also did one for the High-Level Political Forum. The third thing was the economy, and here I have some really radical views. The first one being, and I've been discussing it with some of my friends here in the audience as well, that when you look at economy, it is based on a system of debt. Debt brings in a certain amount of psychological manipulation as a backdrop. That being said, how are we expecting long-term positive outcomes based on a unitary system of transaction? Question to be thought about. And economy was a section where we included some of the examples of regionalized currency systems, which include the dynamics of the local population, the local terrains, or the challenges therein, or the positives therein. So this is the long and short of how we really create a framework. It can't be cast in stone, but the essence of unity is the well-being of the individual, forming the family, making children, nurturing them, and then allowing the nations to become. And this is at a more rudimentary level, this is the gap that all of us sense, and when we get into a meditative state, or we get into the state of mindfulness, it sounds like, hey, this is just too slow stuff for me. Come to think of it, the moment you go to sleep and you wake up, that is the most relaxed state, and you'd like to do that all the time, but you get caught in the kind of models that have been laid out for us to follow and chase. So this is a sort of a backdrop against which I work, and this is something I like to share with anybody and everybody every time I get the mic, because it has to be said, and I say it freely. Thank you.
Wonderful. And now we have, and the Unity paper, we, at the end, we have a QR code. If you, it's a deal we're making. If you scan the code and fill out the survey, we'll send you the paper. No, but anyone that wants to have a copy of the paper, you certainly can. So Shreya is not only our youth representative, Shreya is a peer mindfulness facilitator who learned to teach mindfulness after the Parkland shooting in South Florida, as part of an initiative to support mental health. And she's since joined our team. She's also a board member at the age of 19, because we recognize not just youth voice, but youth leadership is important. And Shreya co-facilitates the Be Nature programs we deliver, and other programs. And she's studying to be a correct me if I'm wrong, a biomedical engineer. So Shreya, we're all here to listen to you. You know what this work is about. You embody it really well. What was your reflection on the film? And what do you have to say to all of us in terms of what is needed, especially when we look at this work from the angle of eco-affinity?
Thank you, Ms. Nally. In terms of reaction to the film, I think I'm left feeling very hopeful as well as encouraged, because this film has resonated with me on many levels, because it shows action in the light of mindfulness. And the film especially shows people connecting to nature right at the source and discovering that we are truly inseparable from the environment itself. And even as the state of the climate declines and calls to us with urgency, I think it is important to continue the work that is bettering the condition of the planet in a way that is mindful of the original goal, in the sense that we are trying to bring more people together to connect with a common mission of bettering the planet, bettering living conditions, and ensuring a future for the future generations, essentially. And I think it is important to remain more long-term outcome-oriented, in the sense that we have to remind ourselves that action and small steps drives progress. So I love to see the community effort in the film, because it shows that people are aware of ecological crisis and that they do care. And there's definitely strength in the drive that knowing that we are not alone brings, like what knowing that we are not alone brings to us. Because as the film shows, everything worth doing takes effort. And it does indeed start with the small things like beach cleanups and little changes to our daily life, whether that be using less water when we take showers, or going to the grocery store and buying milk cartons that are made of paper rather than made of plastic. And I think the earth teaches us that everything is cyclical, and what we give to the planet is what we will give back. So it does take small efforts. The climate crisis is not going to go away in one day, and no one is expecting a miracle from one person. But there is power in numbers, and by working together, we can support each other in the collective mission, as well as inspire others to join us. Thank you.
Thank you. So we are actually, thank you very much, Shreya. And there's more that I'd like to ask you because you're so brilliant, but we are, we have a little bit of time, and what I'd like to do is to transition to the slides. We could transition to the PowerPoint on the screen. So I'm going to invite all of us. So it says groups of 4 or 5, but we're going to do pairs. So, because then you have more time to talk to each other. So what I'm going to invite is for you to pick someone that's close to you, turn to your partner, pick a person A and a person B, and introduce yourselves, what part of the planet you're from, and what is your concern. So just share with each other, what are your concerns about the climate crisis? Why are you here? And what comes up when you think about this? So when we say what comes up, we mean what thoughts, what emotions, what sensations, how do you feel this in your body? So this is an eco-awareness exercise. And it might seem simple, but when the other person is speaking, so if you're person A and person B is speaking, you give them your absolute full attention. You might have thoughts in your mind about what you want to say, and that's okay. Just trust that when it's your turn to speak, it'll come. You'll know what to say because it's in you. So giving your full attention is part of the practice. It's called deep empathetic listening, and this is one of the practices we use. And we're using it here to listen to each other talk about how we feel. However, this practice extends and applies across. So it would be great for you to experience it fully. So go ahead, and we'll give each person 2 minutes, and I'll let you know when to switch. And then the other person will share, and then we'll do another round. All right? Does that, just raise your hand if you think that that's feasible. Is that something you're willing to do, to talk to each other today? All right, okay, good. So let's go ahead and pair up. So we have 2 natural pairs right here, so we're gonna speak off the microphone. So the timer has started. Person A has 2 minutes, and then person B will speak. Okay, so gently lowering your voice into a whisper, whispering your last few words, and then switching to the next person. 2 minutes. Okay, bringing it down to a whisper. There's always more. Accepting non closure. So now I invite you to place your feet flat on the floor as you whisper your last words. So taking a moment to feel your feet, feel the body from head to toe. Feeling the feet. Feeling this breath. This breath unites you and me. We're breathing the same oxygen. This out breath connects us to the earth, the trees, breathing in our exhale. Even in this room, we are connected to each other, to nature. And just taking a moment to be here, nowhere to go, nothing to do, nothing to achieve, if only for a moment. Allow yourself to witness this moment just as it is. Allow the natural regeneration of the cells in your body when you pause, in the same way that nature regenerates from night into day and day into night, from season to season. We regenerate in the same way because we are nature. And just like dawn, allowing our eyes to open, awaken, wiggling fingers and toes, waking up. And now turning to your partner whenever you're ready. What did you notice? What is alive in you now? How does this way of being, human beings, we're not human doings, how does this way of being impact your perspective, your action, whatever your role is in this movement? So you don't have to stick exactly to the questions, but essentially, what's alive in you now? What did you notice? And how is this useful? How is this impacting, perhaps, or not, the way that you will continue to show up in your work? So 2 minutes per person. So just gently bringing your voice down to a whisper as you bring your sentence to a close. And then when you are ready, switching to the next person. Bringing your voices down to a whisper. There's always more. Exchange contact so you can keep talking. And whenever you're ready, Bringing your feet on the floor. Bringing your attention back. And I apologize that we don't have more time. You see, this is what we need. So the next session that we do, we'll make sure we have more time for this talking and less time for the panel talking. I think the wisdom is definitely in the room. So we have 9 minutes left, and I'd like to take the time for you all to share in, so we'll spend about 4 of those minutes allowing folks to share anything that came up for you. Anything that your partner shared with you is confidential. It stays here except that it's live stream. But they didn't hear your conversation. But anything that you'd like to share about anything, this experience, what you're inspired by from being here today, I'd like to invite a few folks to share, and if you have a question. So in the next 5 minutes, we can do that. Or do you want to not be on camera?
I don't care. It's fine. Hi, people in the world. Oh, God. So much sitting while we're here. Just thank you for your guys' work. Thank you for the leadership. Thank you for the example in the film, which will reach further than us. I'm trying to do like both sides. And I just wanted to provide thanks for the work. And I was really interested. I'm like, what's eco-affinity? And so it was really great to do some practice, see some examples, and see the impact that the work is doing. And I look forward to looking up the organization, following online, probably, signing up for a newsletter, which I'm assuming you guys have. And I don't really have any questions. I just wanted to share gratitude for the work you guys are doing and providing new language.
Thank you, Katie. And I don't want to claim the term eco-affinity. I picked it up somewhere and it felt right, and that's what we've been going with.
I'm moved. I think we have to go to new wordings, but also to new worldings. And how to make that concrete between languages, cultures, and belief systems is my thing. I found the question very, very deep, but to really make it solid is actually the thing. T.S. Eliot said, make words solid, and I do it, and we discussed a lot with Artie how to create models, mental models, and share the models, and make them concrete, and not just fight over my position or my perspective or my frame or your frame of reference, but to bring it together. So that's a long way, and I'm with Lysinker and the Commons Cluster since long, so I really enjoyed being here first time live.
Say your name, please.
Okay. Do you want to say your name?
Heiner Benking.
Okay. Thank you. Ife Kilimanjaro with U.S. Climate Action Network. A lot stands out, but what I'll say is I'm thinking about connection here and how, in many places, spaces, there might be the thinking that, oh, you can't be this way in places like this. You have to keep these realms separate, but you don't, that's the problem. We have to bring beyond humanity in the spaces. We have to bring our responsibility as kin to one another and to beings that take forms other than human form and bring those relationships and that love and the commitment to reciprocity and being in right relationship into the spaces where text is being written, where the laws are being passed, where practices are being implemented. And so just wanted to offer that and extend deep gratitude for the work of connection and relationship that is really standing out to me in this and what you all are bringing. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Ife. We are going to begin to close this, and I'd like to Um, that's what we just did. Put this up while we close, just so you have time to scan that. And it's just a little feedback because we're wanting to know who's been here and what you think about what we're doing and what we're about, and also to learn more. And we'll share the paper with you also on Unity. But I'd like to invite the panel in 30 seconds or so, because we have like 3.5 minutes left. Starting with Susanna, and then we'll do RT, Shreya last. Just any parting thoughts, words of wisdom? What's the next step?
Well, as I said to my partner in our sharing, I need to remember to do the practicing in the work and not just on the side of the work. I've been getting pretty heated here. I have a lot of fire in me. I've been saying some things and pointing out some things that I could do in a more mindful way. And I think it would be more effective and better received. And I want to walk into these spaces with my presence and have that be what's noticed. And to work through my anger and my grief and remember what I love and what I'm willing to do to protect it.
Real quick, always take care of yourself. That's the one thing I learned. Self-care is so important, especially in this time. If you're an activist or you're working in government or wherever you work, it is so important to self-care because stress and grief will kill you. So, yeah.
So I will say, I'll say that I've said this many times. The most radical act of self-care is planet care, and vice versa, because we're not separate. We are not separate. We're not separate from each other. We're not separate from the earth. And when we really, really begin to experience that in our bones, when we can walk into a store and feel the pain of the landfill that all of those items are going to go into, when we could really feel what the earth feels, as was described on the previous panel here today, then and only then, with that kind of connection, are we really going to make the right choices and not the false and the fake ones. I'd like to invite Shreya, and then RT is going to close with her comments and a beautiful poem.
So I'd also like to reinforce that our own self-care is inherently connected to the self-care of the planet. And I really like this quote by the Lorax that really resonates with me at times like this. It's, unless someone like you cares a whole awful lot, nothing is going to change. It's not. And I think there is a lot of truth in that statement that we can apply to many aspects of our life. And I think that gives power to the fact that we have the agency to make change and that we can together. Thank you.
Thank you, Shreya. RT?
Check. Okay. Thank you so much, Shreya. This was really nice, and I quite resonate with Lorex as well. So I'd like to close with a poem that just came to me when I was asked this question at one of the other workshops. What does Gaia say to you? And these were the words that came up for me. I am a gift for you. I give you birth from stardust until I give you death to stardust. While you live, I give you the faculties to explore your science, art, culture, tradition, and more. Make what you will of it, but you do not stand for me as much as I stand for you. You can melt my snow, desecrate my rivers, and break my mountains. But remember, you need me more than I need you, so humble down.
Thank you. Beautiful. So we're going to leave the QR code up on the screen for a little bit longer for those who need to see that information. And we just want to thank everyone who showed up on this panel. Want to thank all of the partnering organizations. The Faith Pavilion, there's a QR code. As you're walking out, please scan that code and give your feedback. Because there's no guarantee that we're going to have a Faith Pavilion at the next COP, and we want to make sure that that's happening. We want it to be loud and clear because it's one of the few spaces where, as Ife was saying, we could be this way here, okay? And we also want to thank the Southeast Climate and Energy Network and Exposure Labs for sponsoring and for the Film in the Field grant that allowed us to make this film, which is the very first film. And we are going to continue collecting stories on healing people, heal the planet. So if you have a story to tell, please feel free to reach out to me. Thank you very much.